Let's begin with our focus on Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has been asking for weapons for months, this amid an ammunition shortage. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he is in talks with the United States to acquire long-range weapons to fight off the Russian forces. Now, the Biden administration has so far been reluctant to send long-range missiles and advanced drones to Ukraine. Well, they fear that these assets could be used to hit targets within Russia's internationally recognized borders and spark a dangerous escalation from Moscow. But weapons like the Army Tactical Missile System or the ATACMS and Grey Eagle drones would increase Kiev's range of attack and boost its firepower. They will attack Russian base or ammunition depots that are inside occupied Ukrainian territory. And it's not just long-range missiles which are on the table, but also cluster munitions. They are banned by more than 100 countries, are a class of weapons that contain multiple explosive bomblets called submunitions. Here's more.
Without long-range weapons, it is difficult not only to carry out an offensive mission, but also, honestly, to conduct a defensive operation. This means that you are defending your land and you cannot reach the appropriate distance to destroy the enemy. This is why it is important not only for offensive, but for defensive offensive actions of our military. Long-range weapons is not a new topic.
The U.S. is planning to provide Ukraine with cluster munitions to help it in the war with Russia, U.S. officials told Reuters on Thursday. The move, if confirmed, would provide a powerful new element to Kiev's counteroffensive, but it has already drawn opposition from human rights groups who say the weapon kills indiscriminately. The White House said sending cluster munitions to Ukraine is, quote, under active consideration, but it had no announcement to make. President Joe Biden is due to attend a NATO summit in Lithuania next week, with the conflict likely to dominate discussions. Ahead of the gathering, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has been drumming up support for his country's bid to become a member of the Defense Alliance. He used a trip to the Czech Republic on Thursday to urge NATO countries to stand up to Russia.
Some people still look back at Moscow. Some people are afraid of Russia. Although I believe that this is a great moment, a great chance to show the courage of the entire alliance and the strength of the alliance, but nevertheless, we are talking about a clear signal, some concrete things in the direction of an invitation. We need this motivation. We need honesty in our relations.
Zelensky's plea received support from Czech President Pavel Pavel.
Here it should be made absolutely clear that it is in the interest of the Czech Republic that Ukraine, as soon as the war is over, should start negotiations on joining NATO, because it is also in the interest of our security, regional stability, and economic prosperity.
Ukraine wants to join NATO as quickly as possible, but member states have been divided over how fast that step should be taken. Some are worried the move will take the alliance closer to an active war with Russia. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian city of Lviv remains devastated after a Russian missile hit a residential building there, killing at least 7 people. Officials said much of the rubble left by Thursday's attack had been cleared. Since Russia's invasion in February last year, thousands have fled to Lviv, a city far from the front lines. Ukrainian officials slammed the attack, while Moscow claimed it targeted troop bases, not civilians.
All right, let's try and get in a sense of perspective. And for that, let me introduce my guest. I'm joined in by Professor Valentin Yakushek. He is the chairman of Supervisory Board of Ukrainian Institute of Politics. Many thanks to you, Professor, for joining in. Now, Ukrainian forces have been pressing forward with their grinding counteroffensive for several weeks now. Will fresh U.S. defense assistance provide the much-needed impetus, especially in a counteroffensive, which seems to be reaching a point of stagnation now?
Yes, Ukrainian counteroffensive faces very strong resistance on the side of Russian troops. It's not so easy to go through these 3 lines of defense. Ukrainian military leadership is thinking now of possible changing the tactics not just trying to go through the Russian lines with very huge casualties, but to continue a war of attrition, of destroying the manpower and munitions, weapons of the adversary. So this may be the change in the tactics. At the same time, as you mentioned, there are requests for long-range missiles and for cluster munitions.
Right. And that's what I'm coming to. When we talk about the long-range missiles, how will they help Ukraine in changing that tactic? Is this because they will give Ukraine the advantage to hammer Russian positions in Ukraine, that too without crossing international borders of Russia?
You Indians, you know very well this logic. It's the logic of Kurukshetra battle from Mahabharata, when more and more powerful weapons are used in destroying most of the manpower on both sides. This is the possible logic if the United States provide cluster munitions, and only them can provide them, because the rest of the NATO members have signed the Oslo Convention on prohibiting cluster munitions. In this case, Ukrainian army will have some advantage and will destroy more Russian manpower there in the trenches, which they constructed in the south and in the east of Ukraine, in the occupied territories by Russia. But at the same time, Russia didn't sign the Oslo Convention of 2008. So they have a lot of similar munitions, and there will be casualties on Ukrainian side. What is the tactics of the United States in this situation? I think there is not only attempt to help Ukrainian army to fulfill what was expected from it and to have successful advance in the south and in the east of Ukraine, the occupation of Ukrainian territories lost last year, but also it's a kind of bluffing similar to what the Russian leadership, especially former Russian President Medvedev was saying, threatening with nuclear weapons use. The same may Americans doing.
Right.
But in America.
Right.
So,
yes, please go ahead, finish, and then I'll talk about cluster munitions as well.
So what I think for the United States, it's important to weaken Russia and not to allow Russia to use nuclear weapons, which may be used when Russia feels that it is absolutely threatened, when it is about to lose the whole war. So for the United States, it's important to continue this kind of making Russia weaker and not to allow it to use nuclear weapons. In this case, I don't think that cluster munitions will be provided.
We'll delve deeper, Professor, we'll delve deeper into how to weaken Russia when it comes to these tactics. But let's also talk about cluster munitions, which will be announced by the US President in a package today, as we all know. Why are they being regarded as such controversial bombs, which, of course, as we all know, have also been banned by nearly 100 countries?
Well, when one part in the conflict, in the war, feels threatened that it uses any kind of munition, any kind of weapons. Now for Ukraine, success is needed. That is why Ukrainian military and civilian leadership is saying, please provide to us more powerful weapons. But what happened? When there were discussions with Germany of providing a long-range missile, which is in German called Taurus, or in English probably Taurus, first it seemed that they will provide it, and it goes up to 500 kilometers. But at the end, they decided, oh, not yet, because of the same logic. If these missiles or similar to them are provided, the Russian forces may be threatened that they can be defeated and they can start using tactical nuclear weapons. The West doesn't want to do this. So I suppose there is some element of bluffing on both sides, and probably the most powerful weapons will not be used on both sides.
All right, Professor. Now let's come on to the topic of weakening Russia. It's not just about countering Russia through long-range missiles or cluster munitions. Kiev has also been urging allies to supply more air defense systems. Are they not one of the most reliable when it comes to countering Russian missile attacks, which have become a regular feature for Ukraine now?
This is absolutely logical to ask for more air defense facilities, especially American Patriot. It showed that it is quite efficient. And for Ukraine, it's not enough these anti-aircraft defense systems. They are located in Kiev, in some other cities. Now they were moved to the line of control or line of engagement, but many cities like Lviv, you just explained what happened there. They do not have enough anti-aerial defense systems. So definitely this is the most important element in Ukrainian request, and the most humanistic one if others are connected with questionable issue of using cluster ammunition, which is questioned by international law, but air defense is really needed, and it may be an incentive to start negotiations after this period of Ukrainian counteroffensive and of further weakening of both sides. So these are two absolutely different issues. Air defense and cluster munition and long-range missiles.
Absolutely, they are. And you rightly highlighted how a long-range air defense system will perhaps prove to be better in this war, especially for Ukraine, which may also perhaps help Ukraine and the United States in averting that escalation which the European allies have also been fearing with Russia. Having said that, many thanks to you, Professor, for joining in with all those latest inputs.